Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't know why, but there seems to be some anticipation of me getting up. I don't know why people are so interested in what I have to say today. Madam Speaker, I rise to give my contribution to this debate on the Domestic Partnership Bill 2020. Madam Speaker, I have listened keenly to all the members who have spoken before me, and I'm not surprised by what has been said thus far, I will admit, but I do want to begin, Madam Speaker, by addressing some of what has been said, not just within this honorable House, but also within the wider community. Because I've heard, Madam Speaker, a lot of reasons proffered as to why this bill has to come and has to come now. And I've heard a lot of misinformation being used to support this bill. Before I begin, Madam Speaker, I will say that I intend to focus primarily on this bill. I don't think it's any secret what my personal views are on this topic. I don't think anybody has to guess. I don't think the people of Newlands have to guess. They elected me knowing what my position was. However, Madam Speaker, this is not about me. This is about the people of the Cayman Islands. And it is sad when I sit here and listen to reasons being given why this has to be done without the blessing and the approval of the people of the Cayman Islands. And I will explain, Madam Speaker, a little later on what I mean by that. But Madam Speaker, one of the things I've heard is that, and I just heard it again, Madam Speaker, is that the governor, and this is coming from the appeal court ruling, that the governor, under his constitutional authority, under Section 81, could actually bring a bill without the support of this legislature. And I want to delve into that a little bit, Madam Speaker, because while Section 81 does give the governor the powers to do that, it says if the governor considers that the enactment of legislation is necessary or desirable with respect to or in the interests of any matter which for he or she is responsible under Section 55, but after consultation with the Premier, it appears to the governor that the Cabinet is unwilling to support the introduction into the Legislative Assembly of a bill for the purpose, or that the Assembly is unlikely to pass a bill introduced into it for the purpose, the governor may, with the prior approval of the Secretary of State, cause a bill for the purpose to be published in a government notice, and may, notwithstanding that the bill has not been passed by the Assembly, assent to it on behalf of Her Majesty. But, Madam Speaker, the Constitution talks about Section 55. And under Section 55, what are considered the special responsibilities of the governor. Section 55(1) says the governor shall be responsible for the conduct subject to this Constitution and any other law of any business of the government with respect to the following matters: defense, external affairs, subject to subsections 3 and 4, internal security, including the police without prejudice to Section 58, the appointment, including the appointment or on promotion or transfer, appointment on contract, and appointment to act in an office of any person to any public office, the suspension, termination of employment, dismissal, or retirement of any public officer, or taking the disciplinary action in respect of such an officer. And it goes on to talk about the appointment. Madam Speaker, the governor's responsibilities under Section 55 are defense, external affairs, internal security, appointment of public officers. Subsection 55(3) adds, Madam Speaker, that the governor cannot enter in a treaty or give final approval to any international agreement without the approval of cabinet. But, Madam Speaker, if you look at 31(2) of our Constitution, the governor shall exercise his or her functions in accordance with this Constitution and any other law and subject thereto, in accordance with such instructions, if any, as may be addressed to the governor by or on behalf of Her Majesty. Madam Speaker, the words shall and in accordance with this Constitution are important. This Constitution authorizes the governor, as it does all of us, in the exercise of our responsibilities. But the governor is also subject to this Constitution. That includes, Madam Speaker, the Bill of Rights, which says that marriage is between a man and a woman. The governor does not have the discretion to ignore that. Now, this debate isn't about marriage between a man and a woman, but I've heard threats, or not threats, but comments being made that we could potentially face that eventuality if the UK government decided, through order in council, to implement same-sex, whatever it may be, marriage. The UK has that power, Madam Speaker, through 125 of the Constitution, but the governor most certainly does not have the discretion to simply pass a law here that is not in accordance with this Constitution. The governor, Madam Speaker, is therefore compelled to consult with our cabinet, except in exceedingly rare circumstances. Section 55 does not give the governor authority to pass a same-sex marriage bill. I hope that puts that to rest, Madam Speaker. We are all 19 of us bound by this Constitution, and so is the governor. And that is right. The appeal court actually said that there is no right to same-sex marriage. And the cabinet agrees with that. How can the governor then do it? I've also heard, Madam Speaker, that the United Kingdom will force same-sex marriages on us if we don't do this. Madam Speaker, the United Kingdom completed a constitution modernization exercise with most of the territories, overseas territories, leading up to 2006. In all of those new constitutions, Madam Speaker, that were brought into force since 2006 in the overseas territories, there exists a fundamental rights and freedoms chapter, or Bill of Rights, which was put in their constitutions. Deliberately put in those constitutions, Madam Speaker, so that no government of the day can change those fundamental rights on a whim or a fancy. You have to go through a constitutional amendment exercise to change those rights. Madam Speaker, 8 new constitutions were agreed and brought into force as a result of that constitutional review process. And it was noted that some of the territories, in establishing their Bill of Rights, went even further than the UK had required in accordance with the Human Rights Act, 1998. Madam Speaker, most of us would know who Ian Hendry is. He is a gentleman that when we went to London to negotiate changes to the Constitution, he was the principal legal advisor to the UK government during those talks. I've read law books that use him as a source. That is how well known he is throughout this Commonwealth as a constitutional expert. He wrote a book, Madam Speaker. It's called British Overseas Territories Law. And he noted at the time of that constitutional modernization exercise that all of the Caribbean overseas territories unanimously opposed same-sex marriage. With your permission, Madam Speaker, I would just like to read one short paragraph from that book.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Page 166. He said, to date, the case law of the European Court of Human Rights has confirmed that the right to marry, guaranteed by Article 12 of the Convention, refers to a traditional marriage between 2 persons of opposite biological sex. And while the UK Parliament has legislated for same-sex marriage in the Married Same-Sex Couple Act 2013, the Act does not extend to any overseas territory. Despite reference to Article 12 of the Convention, to national law governing the exercise of the right to marry, the wording does not, in the view of some territories, provide a clear enough steer on this issue, and therefore, additional wording was agreed during the negotiations. Madam Speaker, this goes back to what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was saying yesterday when he talked about the Cayman Islands government and others going to London for constitutional talks on our new constitution. In agreeing those changes, those constitutional arrangements, the UK agreed that we could take the position that we have, that there were no human rights concerns as far as the subject of same-sex marriage went. And at the time, the UK didn't have any concerns, and they agreed a new constitution. That is how our current constitution came into being, and how it came to recognize that marriage is between a man and a woman. The people of the Cayman Islands then voted, Madam Speaker, in a referendum for that constitution. 63% of those who voted were in favor of the constitution, which contained that wording. If the Caymanian people did not want that, they would have rejected it during the referendum vote. Madam Speaker, 1.5 years ago, just about, the UK government and the Cayman Islands government negotiated further changes to the Cayman Islands Constitution. I was there as part of the team that the Premier led, along with the former Leader of the Opposition. The subject never came up. Not once do I recall anything being said about this. To me, that was affirmation that the UK had no concerns. Why not bring it up at a time when you have everyone at the table? If this is such a burning and pressing issue, why not bring it up then? Those changes, Madam Speaker, have now been sent on to the Privy Council, last I heard. And I have a letter here addressed to an Honourable Premier, Madam Speaker, from Lord Ahmed of Wimbledon, which confirmed that. I don't think I need to read it, Madam Speaker, and I think it's been tabled here before. But I will just note what he said. Sorry, Madam Speaker. Right at the end, he said, I would be grateful for your views on the final package of constitutional reform proposals subject to the points made above. If you agree to the package, the FAC will be notified and the draft order in council will be sent to the Privy Council for the order to be made. So now, Madam Speaker, I'm hearing that this may be withheld now because we're not behaving. But that's not what this letter says. Madam Speaker, the European Court of Human Rights position has remained also largely unchanged. There have been a number of cases with regard to same-sex marriage. And it's been the position that individual governments have to decide if they want to implement an alternative arrangement for same-sex couples. How can anyone then suggest, and I've heard the threat of independence and all sorts of stuff, that if we do not pass this bill, that one of those options will become reality? How can anyone suggest that the UK is going to force same-sex marriage on us? Madam Speaker, I just want to clear up some of the inaccuracies and confusion that I've heard surrounding this bill so that we can consider this bill on its own merit without anything hanging over us, any impending doom or threat. We cannot make this decision here today, Madam Speaker, with a cloud hanging over this honourable legislature. Madam Speaker, I would like to also read from a report produced by the House of Lords European Union Committee, 12th report of session 2015-2016. I have a copy here for you if you would. Sarge. And while I don't have the time to read the whole report, I've photocopied specific parts of it.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this report was produced and it addresses the push for the United Kingdom to implement its own Bill of Rights. And it presents the perspective and the views of the House of Lords on that subject. And I looked at Chapter 3, which is entitled The Government's Case for a British Bill of Rights. The Secretary of State's evidence to us was that the government's first exposition on the public record of why a British Bill of Rights was necessary and of what it might contain. Why is a British Bill of Rights necessary? The Secretary of State gave several reasons why the government was seeking to propose a British Bill of Rights. The first was that many of the constitutional reforms introduced since 1997 were being reviewed as reflected, for example, in Scotland and Wales bills. It seems only right that we should look at the Human Rights Act in that context because it was introduced at a fair lick. Even though the UK played a role in drafting the ECHR, to the government's regret, human rights have a bad name in the public square. The Secretary of State said that they have become associated with unmeritorious individuals pursuing through the courts claims that do not command public support or sympathy. His greater concern, however, was that human rights was seen as a foreign intervention. Most troublingly, human rights are seen as something that are done to British courts and the British people as a result of foreign intervention, rather than something that we originally championed and created and seek to uphold. Therefore, part of the purpose of a British Bill of Rights or a UK Bill of Rights is to affirm the fact that these things, like a prohibition on torture or a right to due process and an appropriate trial before a properly constituted tribunal, are fundamental British rights. He amplified these concerns in response to a further question. I do think that we can make changes that ensure that people recognize that these rights spring from our traditions. These rights are our patrimony, and these rights can be given effect to in the courts in a better way and a more British way. If we manage to do that, it would be a gain for human rights domestically and internationally. Madam Speaker, that is just a taste of the attitudes that surround the whole idea that you can have one standard of human rights throughout the globe and that it fit everywhere that it's applied. Even the United Kingdom has concerns with the Charter on Human Rights. Madam Speaker, I sat here and I listened, and I've heard members talk about us needing to be careful because the future generations of this country have different attitudes and perspectives when it comes to this topic. I've heard members say that the future generations of Caymanian are going to see things much differently. Madam Speaker, I'm a parent. I have 2 girls. And I recognized a long time ago that one of my responsibilities as a father, if I chose to raise them in a Christian home, in a Christian family, is to teach them our Christian values and traditions. It would be unacceptable for me to impose that on them. It is their choice as individuals. But I have a responsibility until they become consenting adults to teach them and raise them in the traditions and ways that I choose them, as long as it is not harmful to them. For us to now say that the young people of this country have decided that they want to reject that worries me, because we as adults will sit back and accept that, abdicate our responsibility as parents to guide and teach our young people, not force them, teach them with love the right way. We can't just throw up our hands. I was young at one point, Madam Speaker, and I did some foolishness. Things that I probably shouldn't be standing here alive today. But I had parents who corrected me and guided me in our Christian traditional way of living. There is no sin in saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Why has that become a bad word? Why do I feel persecuted for saying it? In my own country. I should feel proud to say something like that. There are other countries, Madam Speaker, that embrace their local traditions and their ways of life. I think about places like Jamaica, where I share some background. Proud people, not willing to give up what they stand for or believe in for anything. But we are. Excuse me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I made a promise to my children and my mother. My mother didn't want me to go into politics. She said it would change me. And I told her, the day politics changes me is the day I quit. Madam Speaker, I've heard discussions about how God wants us to live with people, the Christian way. And everyone is right. God wants us to love our neighbor. Madam Speaker, I see my pastor is watching, and I will admit that I don't attend church every Sunday, and I should. But I do know right from wrong, and I do believe in God. But I will never stand here and invoke the name of God to justify something that I know is wrong. Never. I'm not knocking down the church door, Madam Speaker, but I fear God. I've heard discussions about slavery and that it was accepted at one time, and equating this debate to slavery, Madam Speaker, the people who were enslaved didn't accept it. But it goes further than that. It was never a sin to be black. Let's stop using that comparison. I hear people do it all the time. There's no comparison whatsoever between slavery, not just black people, all races of people were enslaved. Let's not use that comparison. There's a difference. If you're a Christian, it is insulting to hear people use that comparison. If you descend from people who were enslaved, it is an even bigger insult. Don't do it. Madam Speaker, I think there's a case here of conflicting ideologies. The European Union was built, and I know the ECHR is separate from the European Union, but the ideology is still there, that their law is supreme and reigns over local state law. And I think we're suffering from a little bit of that here, Madam Speaker. When I see this push, it seems to be that we're being imposed upon to accept standards and norms elsewhere as law here. And we have a right, and the UK highlighted that when Brexit happened. We have a right for our national laws to be respected and supreme. Madam Speaker, I want to talk about what the impact of this legislation will be on this country. And I want to talk about the fact that in this bill, the definition of a domestic partnership is not there. It only says that a domestic partnership in this bill means a domestic partnership formalized and registered in accordance with this law. Yet the marriage law provides a much more clear definition of marriage. Madam Speaker, I have several concerns and issues with this. If there is no definition in statute, I know that there will be case law that you can go and find a definition or international definitions, but there's none written into this bill. It is open-ended, wide open, subject to interpretation by the courts. The same courts that seemingly have landed us right here today. Why not put the definition in the bill? I've seen definitions, Madam Speaker, suggesting that domestic partnerships are two people involved in a caring relationship who live together. I've seen that. But I've heard two members on the government side get up and suggest that this could be something else, that they don't have to be in love, they don't have to be partners in the sense of people intimate with each other. It could just be two buddies decide to form a partnership together for some mutual benefit, real estate or whatever. I'll come into that. Madam Speaker, why leave it to the courts to define that? Because if there's ever a challenge on what a domestic partnership is, and there will be, the courts are going to decide. Not us, the courts, because we decided not to put it in here. And as the international case, the global, the case law that you would rely on for those definitions changes over time, it automatically changes here when you do challenge things in court. Because the lawyers are going to go find the case law that suits their argument. And they're going to put that forward in their arguments, Madam Speaker. So I started to think, did we really think this through? Do we know what the wider implications of this will be? Did anyone pick up the immigration, immigration transition law, and look there to see what the effect of an wide open definition of domestic partnership would be? I did. There's a term in our immigration regime called marriage of convenience, Madam Speaker. A marriage of convenience means a marriage into with the primary intention of avoiding or benefiting from any of the provisions of this law. The requirement to be granted Caymanian status, Madam Speaker, states that it can be done for two individuals whose marriage is not a marriage of convenience. One of the tests for marriage of convenience, Madam Speaker, is that the couple might not be living together anymore. This is not stated as a requirement for domestic partnership. You don't have to live together. Here's a scenario, Madam Speaker. Person is approaching rollover in the Cayman Islands and decides that they're going to enter a domestic partnership with a work colleague who has permanent residence, or a Caymanian. How does the immigration authorities, the enforcement arm of immigration, prove that that was a partnership of convenience if the law doesn't set the criteria, the strict criteria, for you entering a domestic partnership? You know what would happen? You would have to go to court and challenge it. The government would have to go to court and challenge it. This, Madam Speaker, is going to kick our immigration door off the hinges. It's already open. How can you challenge any marriage or union as a union of convenience unless you define what it is. And if you don't define it, it's wide open for interpretation by the same courts that caused us to be here today. The same applies to revocation of Caymanian status, Madam Speaker. The board can revoke Cayman status when the holder of Cayman status has been party to a marriage of convenience. How do you prove marriage of convenience? The law doesn't even describe a relationship as committed, caring, nothing. And I've heard two members on the government side, so I have to take that as an indication of what the intent of this bill is. It's not loving, caring, living together, nothing like that. It is pure convenience. So, Madam Speaker, same thing applies to employment rights certificate for spouse of a Caymanian. Same applies, Madam Speaker, where couples are both here on work permits, and one work permit is expiring and the other person wants to stay. They can enter domestic partnership with someone whose work permit is not expiring, and so the other person that permit might be running, continue to run, and they can get more time on their work permit because they're the domestic partner of that person. Madam Speaker, I want to make this clear. This is not just about same-sex anymore. This is anybody. Think about what this is going to do to the population of this country. It is going, we talk about increasing the population, this is it. Artificially increasing our population.
You get your 100,000 then?
But we'll be more than 100,000 then. We'll probably be 200, 300. Because people are already thinking about it. I know, they have told me. They're already thinking, well, how can this work for me? People are excited about this bill, you know. It is an open door to immigration into the Cayman Islands. And we are doing it to ourselves. Madam Speaker, it's scary, and that is what the Honorable Leader of the Opposition was talking about yesterday when the Premier accused him of, what did he, I can't remember his exact wording. He wanted him to clarify who he meant and whether or not Chantal Day was Caymanian. He's talking about those people, the non-Caymanians who can take advantage of this. And they don't have to be gay, homosexuals, whatever. They could just be anybody. So, Madam Speaker, the whole concept of marriage of convenience is going to go away. We are now, with passing this bill, we are throwing that out the window. Immigration is going to be producing more permanent residents and Caymanians than we could ever imagine, because everybody is going to take advantage of this. But, Madam Speaker, it goes further. The marriage laws. Look at Clause 40 of the bill, where it applies the matrimonial causes law and the maintenance law to the breakdown and dissolution of a domestic partnership. And I hope somebody will correct me when they get up today, because the grounds for breakdown of a marriage under the matrimonial causes law, Madam Speaker, is that one person has committed adultery, or there's been unreasonable behavior, desertion for 2 years, lived apart for 2 years, and the respondent, one of the parties, consents to the dissolution, or you lived apart for 5 years. Madam Speaker, I just talked about domestic partnership not having a definition. How can you then say that you're applying the matrimonial causes law, which allows divorce or dissolution because of adultery, when the domestic partnership isn't bound to that condition? If it's not defined in the law, how can you say that you want to dissolve a domestic partnership for adultery? It doesn't apply. Somebody thought they said square peg, round hole. It doesn't work. We don't know if the grounds for divorce or dissolution under the matrimonial causes law are going to be applied in the same way, or if we're going to create new rules for domestic partnerships. But what I see this doing, based on comments from members of the government, is that we are wiping the slate clean and providing something functionally equivalent to marriage with no accountability, no responsibility. You can get in and out of it as quick as you want. You don't have to answer to any of your behavior, and it's more convenient. And what it's going to do? It's going to encourage people to not even consider marriage. My good friend, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Commerce, talked about the types of partnerships people could enter into. Friends, investors, retirees, people in platonic relationships. What will the conditions be for dissolution of those partnerships? It can't be adultery. Madam Speaker, the minister trying to backtrack me a little bit, but you know, the horse is out the stable. It done gone. Providing an easy alternative to marriage, Madam Speaker, and this is going to erode further traditional Christian marriage. I heard somebody say it's going to preserve and help. No, it's not. It is eroding the foundation of our Christian marriages, because it is providing an easy alternative. Lobster pot versus Burger King. And they were creating a Burger King marriage here. That's what we're doing. Fast food. Drive-through. Madam Speaker, I hope that I got this wrong. Or maybe that the minister was incorrect in his interpretation of a domestic partnership. But until I see a definition written in statute, I'm not trusting anything. Trust but verify. That's what my good friend from East End always says. Think about how this is going to impact the family unit, Madam Speaker. When two people are involved in a no-commitment relationship, just platonic, good buddies, pals, raising adopted children, what does that do for the foundation of the Caymanian family unit? What is that going to do? We're already talking about our kids having different ideas than us and adopting things that we didn't adopt, that we don't find acceptable. And we've thrown up our hands there and said, okay, that's fine, let them do what they want. Now we're adding to that by eroding one of the most important institutions in this country, the family. Don't we see enough going on with our young people, Madam Speaker? Don't we see what is happening to our children? What they're exposed to? Madam Speaker, I have a technology background, but social media worries me. Because it's no longer just open Facebook and look at what people are posting. They're targeting children. There's a targeting system within all these social media platforms. And it knows what you look at. You know what it does, Madam Speaker? You have a WhatsApp conversation, because they're all owned by the same people now, you know. A WhatsApp conversation on your phone about a specific topic. Check Instagram if you don't see an ad pop up later on about that same thing. They are targeting you. And while we sit back and say, oh, you know, it's great, my child has a phone, we have to be very careful what they're exposed to, you know. I believe in technology. I have a degree in computer science. I worked in technology most of my life. but I know the dangers of it. And I see what is on social media, Madam Speaker. And while some of the younger folks might not like me for saying it, it is more than 50% inappropriate. I dread when my youngest daughter gets a phone. I'm going to have to find some way to lock that down, because the things that I see targeting our young people, and now we're adding to it? No, Madam Speaker. At least, Madam Speaker, the marriage law makes an attempt to have couples who are divorcing or separating reconcile. It doesn't just grant you a divorce or dissolution right away. There's certain rules and procedures you have to follow before you can get a divorce. At least that is in place with the marriage law. But this regime, there's no accountability, no commitment, and no consequences, Madam Speaker. Think about that for a second, what that is going to do to us socially. The part, Madam Speaker, where it talks about the authorization of a master of a ship to be able to formalize a partnership. I agree. I think the member from North Side mentioned it, and the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Why do we need to put that in there now? What is the pressing need for that? Is it that we're going to make it a money-making venture? Two individuals on a cruise ship somewhere that's registered in the Cayman Islands, entering a domestic partnership, and they will never pass these shores. They will never set foot on these shores. Why do we need to do that for the rest of the world?
Copy and paste legislation.
Copy and paste. I was about to say it. I read the Bermuda bill, the act. This is copy and paste. There's a lot of copy and pasting going on. And this is the result, Madam Speaker, of not consulting with your people.
But
Copy and paste
is always based on instructions, and the AG is a creature of instruction.
The Leader of the Opposition is priming me up to have a go at the Honourable Attorney General. I'm joking, Madam Speaker. He would never suggest I do that. But, Madam Speaker, this is a good indication of what happens when you draft legislation without consulting your people. Oh yeah, Madam Speaker, I'm reminded it's not the drafter's fault. I know where political policy comes from. It's not the drafting team. So, Madam Speaker, we were willing to forego the usual drafting process involving consultation first with your people to ensure we had the blessing of the people before we went forward with this. And I have to question the government. I want someone to get up and answer me. Did the Caymanian people agree to this bill? Yes or no? If anybody can answer that and say yes with their hand on their heart, you may get a bit more support from me. But no, not the Caymanian people I spoke to. And when I read the results of a survey I did, it'll shock you. Madam Speaker, all of these arguments before that I just mentioned go back to the root of this issue. Lack of consultation with the people of the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, this bill was gazetted on the 26th of June, 2020. It was then announced that we would go into a 1-month consultation period. As the Leader of the Opposition said, it has never happened before. Why is it for this bill we decided to launch a public consultation after the bill was gazetted? Think about that. The governor sent out a press release And the government had issued a press release, Madam Speaker. But that press release, the only time that had been released to the public was as in a hyperlink in the governor's press release. The government normally sends out their press releases to GIS and all over the Cayman Islands to the media houses. Why wasn't this one sent out?
Embedding himself in things that don't concern him.
The governor sent it as a link. This press release was published on the Gazette website. That's it. How many Caymanians check the Gazette website every day, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, I'm sure you've seen it as a member of the government, but I have a copy of it here, and I would like to read it now, with your permission. I have a copy for you as well, Madam Speaker.
Permission granted.
Madam Speaker, it has no date. It says, press release, publication of Domestic Partnership Bill 2020. Following the constitutional challenge by Ms. Chantel Day and Ms. Vicky Borden-Bush, seeking the right to enter into same-sex marriage, or at the minimum, a declaration that provision should be made for them to enter into a civil partnership, and following an initial ruling from the Grand Court to the effect that the Bill of Rights gave them the right to marry, the matter was appealed by the government to the Court of Appeal. On 7th of November 2019, the Court of Appeal delivered its ruling. The court ruled that as the law currently stands, marriage in the Cayman Islands can only be between couples of opposite sex. However, although the Court of Appeal found against Chantel Day and Vicky Borden-Bush, the court went on to make a very unequivocal and strongly worded declaration to the effect that Day and Borden-Bush are entitled expeditiously to legal protection in the Cayman Islands, which is functionally equivalent to marriage. The court observed, among other things, that it was apparent for several years that there is an obligation to provide such a framework and that the failure to do so was woeful. The court observed that this failure of the Legislative Assembly is a continuing violation of Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Further, the court made the point that the executive and the legislature are expected to obey the law and to respect decisions of the court. It went on to state that it would be wholly unacceptable for this declaration by the court to be ignored whether or not there is an appeal to the Privy Council. Accordingly, in keeping with the declaration of the Court of Appeal, the government has agreed to have the Domestic Partnership Bill 2020 considered by the Legislative Assembly following a 30-day public consultation period. Comments on the bill by members of the public may be forwarded to the Legislative Drafting Department at cheryl.neblet@gov.ky or care of the Portfolio of Legal Affairs, 4th floor, Government Administration Building. Now, Madam Speaker, this is the government saying, we want to hear from you. What did they do? They didn't send it out. It was published on the Gazette website, nothing else. The governor sent it out as a link to his. How many people got that? Wait till I read my survey results. Madam Speaker, government launched a 30-day consultation on this bill with no excitement, no fanfare, no nothing. It was just quiet. The media didn't even pick up on it for a while. Normally, with this government in particular, if they're doing something that they're proud of, that they're doing for their people, it's all over social media. It's all over the press. Not one mention. It was quiet. You could hear whispers. And now we're here with a bill. It went even further than that, Madam Speaker. I went to the government website, the one dedicated to public consultations, where you would find all the legislation that's undergoing public consultation right now. Guess what I found? Bullying legislation, enforcement of mortgage-type security over real estate, family law reform, data protection regulations 2018, no domestic partnership bill. In the middle of a consultation on a bill this important, the government website didn't mention this bill. It's not there. So where do people go to find out what the government is considering? Where's the communication with our bosses? Hey, boss, this is what we're doing. I didn't see it. Madam Speaker, we then launched consultation after the bill was drafted. So where is the opportunity, which is an important part of the drafting process, that you are creating laws with the feedback of the general public to guide you? Where's the opportunity for the general public to have their input and their say in this bill when it's already been gazetted? I've heard the Honorable Premier mention one time that there will be a small amendment. All that feedback that I got by email, by WhatsApp, that I got personally, all those people who reached out to me with concerns, and we're going to get one small amendment? Are we really listening to the people? Did we really pay attention to the consultation? Where is the consultation result? I would expect somebody would have presented it by now. Has anyone gotten up and said, here's what the public said during the consultation period? It's over now. We should have it. Where is it? Madam Speaker, the UK Parliament has a website with a 4-page document on it, which gives detailed information on how to conduct a public consultation. I would suggest somebody download that and read it, because we didn't follow the rules there either. Madam Speaker, I expect to see a lot of amendments to this bill based on the feedback I got. Madam Speaker, why didn't the government have a referendum on this subject? If we are, and we're talking about two different things, marriage versus domestic partnership, technically, but the concept is the same. And if we pass this Constitution by referendum, and we're now seeking to change a major component of it, of the Bill of Rights, don't you think that the people have a right to speak again? Madam Speaker, the Premier said that a referendum, a government-initiated referendum, wouldn't be appropriate. You read Section 69 of the Constitution for him. Power to provide for a referendum. A law enacted by the legislature may make provision, this is Section 69, Madam Speaker, may make provision to hold a referendum amongst persons registered as electors in accordance with Section 90 on a matter or matters of national importance. National importance. Madam Speaker, this is national importance. Unless he has lost his political instincts. This is nationally important to the people of the Cayman Islands. So a referendum on this topic would have been wholly appropriate. And nobody can tell me that what I just read from the Constitution doesn't say that. Why is passing this bill, Madam Speaker, more important than the immigration issues it's going to cause, the family life issues it's going to introduce? What is the rush? The appeal court? Madam Speaker, given the UK's position that this is a domestic issue for us to resolve ourselves, why did we rush this legislation through and ignore the fact that our people have not had any say on this? Mind you, I wouldn't be arguing so strongly, Madam Speaker, if we had gone through the right process and had let the people decide and state their wishes. And then if at the end of that, the people decided that this is what they wanted, then I would have to shut up. But I can't, Madam Speaker. I really can't. Madam Speaker, why the clandestine way of conducting the consultation, making the announcements? Why not put it on the government website? Why not put it on the government Facebook and Instagram? It wasn't there. The press release didn't go out. Madam Speaker, I see what the government is attempting to do with this bill. And while I've been very strong in my opposition to this morning, I kind of see where they've tried to sterilize this bill. They've tried to refrain from using the word same-sex. Matter of fact, if you weren't paying attention, you probably wouldn't even catch that this was about the root of the matter, which is affording same-sex couples the same benefits as non-same-sex couples when it comes to marriage or unions. But it's been sterilized. And even in the definition of domestic partnership, which is very innocuous in this bill. But at the root of this issue, Madam Speaker, this is about same-sex couples wanting to be in some form of union. But the attempts, and they say the
Leader of the opposition, it's now 1 p.m., so we'll suspend the House will suspend its proceedings for lunch. So I asked all members return to the chamber at 2:30.